Okay guys, we're back out here in our Back to Eden garden this morning. We are ready to start planting our tomatoes. The temperatures, last morning we hope in the 40s right here for a while. We're fixing to go into 50s for many, many days. So we feel like we can go ahead and start putting our tomatoes in and getting them hardened off. We've been hardening them off in the greenhouse, trying to get them ready. So what I do when I plant tomato plants, I'm a little bit different than other people. I take a post hole digger and I dig me a hole about 16 inches deep. And I know y'all, the birds are probably driving you nuts in this. But I dig a hole about 16 inches deep. And in this hole, what I do is we save our corn cobs from the previous harvest season of corn when we shuck it off and take them off the cob to give to our animals and to sell the seeds. We don't throw the cobs away. We save them, and what we do is we drop them down in these holes in the ground. I usually put 4 to 5 cobs per hole. What this does is the cobs absorb water and they act as a sponge, and the tomato roots actually grow down into this and are able to maintain a moist level. Even if we don't get out here and get them watered every day, at least the roots grow down into a spongy cob that stays damp all the time. And plus they decompose in the soil and help to build the soil up. Now, this Back to Eden garden we're doing here is really an experiment for us, because I mean, I've dug a hole here 16 inches deep and I'm still in rich black dirt because we've built our soil up here. The only reason we do the mulch on top is just basically for weed control. We're not trying to increase nutrition in the soil that much because our soil is already very nutritious. The pH reading shows that it's good. But even with that, when I planted tomatoes today, I have a bag of gypsum over here at the tractor and I have some in a cup here. I put about a quarter of a cup of gypsum per tomato plant just to make sure that I don't have any problem with the blossom end rot on my tomatoes, which I virtually never have. And hopefully this year we will not have it either. But I just want to show y'all the technique that we use. Now, I have put the 5 corn cobs down in this 16-inch deep hole here already. We're putting the dirt in on top of the cobs here. I like to just kind of crumble it up and put it back in there on top of it. Move them around a little bit. Kind of pack it just a little bit now. And I'll stop right there. And I've got this little bit of gypsum here. And this gypsum got wet in the bag, so it's not a big deal. But I put the gypsum in here and I kind of like spread it around. And then I mix a little bit more dirt in on top of it so that the roots actually grow into it. And then next we're going to set the tomato plants. We're going to put a little bit more dirt in here and then we're going to set the tomato plants in on top of it. Okay guys, I've got a little bit of dirt back in the hole now. I'm going to come in here. We'll put a little bit of Epsom salt because plants need the magnesium for cell structure build. And plus, most of our soil today and our plants are deficient of magnesium. So I'm going to put the magnesium in there. And then the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to reach over in here and get me one of these tomatoes out of our tomato plants here. Now these are nice, healthy Amish Paste tomatoes. They're a good 10 to 12 inches tall. We've transplanted them into solo cups and added magnesium into the water, which give them a real good, healthy, strong look to them. Now we're going to see if we can just turn them. What I like to do is turn them upside down out of the cup. You see all the root system on them there? And then I'll come in here and I'll mix this kind of around in here a little bit. And you don't have to worry with a tomato about going too deep because they'll actually form limbs, roots up on the stalks. And I'll take these bottom leaves off right here because they're serving absolutely no purpose at this point. And I'm going to sprinkle the dirt in. I like to crush up my dirt when I put it around them. And I take my fingers and kind of tamp it down in around the roots a little bit. And I'll just keep adding dirt and crushing it in around till I get it up about where I want it at. And I think we're going to be about there. And I'll kind of leave it hollowed out a little bit. Now, I'm not going to take right at this moment and move my mulch over here just yet, because I've learned in the deep south where we live at, we have such a problem with insects in this Back to Eden stuff, these chips and stuff. the insects a lot of times will come in here when I put the mulch back around it, and they'll cut this plant off because they live in the soil. So what I want to do is I want to try to give this plant a few days at least to get established and get started and get growing. And then we'll come back and we've got this thing kind of hollowed out. We're going to water it, let that fill up with water, and then we'll move on to our next one. Also, guys, one of the next things we do is beside the tomatoes, we try to put basil plants because we use a lot of basil here. Now this year I did not get to get a start of basil. We got behind with all the gathering and everything. We didn't get to get everything going like we wanted to. So what I ended up doing was going to the store and buying a basil. Now basil is extremely hardy, and I try to pick the ones that's got like 3 good plants spaced out in them. Because what I'll do is I'll take this plant and I'll break one of them off. And I've already got my hole done here. And I'm gonna take this basil plant and stick it in here. I try to be pretty easy with it, make sure I get it, because basil's kind of tender when it first starts out. Now I'll get my dirt put back around it. And we use basil as a companion plant with our tomatoes because it's also an insect deterrent because of the smell that it gives off, and it seems to work real good. And we'll do the same exact thing here. We're going to hold off about putting the chips around it, give it a day or two to get watered in, get going good, and then we'll come back and wreck this mulch back up around it. All right, guys, we have finished with the amount of tomatoes we had in our container. We planted 20 Amish Paste. We put in 9 basils in between the 20 Amish Paste. We got about 40 more Amish Paste to go on this particular part, and we'll have it completed. And then we'll start on our Cherokee tans. We have our rattlesnake beans next to it. A few of them are starting to break the ground right now. It's been so cool, they hadn't really had a chance to come up, but they're starting. Now what we've got to do is go up and get piles of chips and mulch and bring in here and start putting around this, to try to see if we can't, you know, get the weeds out and all that, you know, keep them from coming in here. Because I'm just going to be honest with you right now, we're just playing back to Eden because we don't really need this. Our soil is like 16 inches deep, black, rich dirt. But it's an experiment for us to just see how it goes. It's more permaculture for us than it is anything else, because that's what we're really interested in, is bringing everything closer to our house. And the wood chips eventually will amend our soil. We know that. It's just that I spent, to do these 20 plants the way I plant and put the 9 basils in, it took me over 2 hours to do and put the cages in. Yesterday evening I jumped on the tractor, I planted a ½ an acre in 15 minutes. So, you know, it makes a lot of difference. And I know y'all hear the saw in the background, so don't worry about that. That's our neighbor working. But that's the difference between back to Eden and using equipment. When you raise your food like we do to survive off of, the tractor is absolutely necessary for us to raise enough food. Now this will produce, when we get through here, will produce enough tomatoes for us. We're going to have about 70 plants here, and then we'll have about 40 or 50 Cherokee purples in the Cherokee garden. So we'll have plenty of tomatoes this year if everything goes all right, but we're really excited to try to figure this type of system out and get it in close to the house. So thank y'all from Deep South Homestead.